Hey everyone, it's Bailey. Welcome back to the channel and thank you so much for tuning in to what's going to be a review and swatches of all of these shades in the new Smashbox Be Legendary Liquid Pigments collection. These guys, there are 8 shades in here and then 9 shades in the new Liquid Metals collection. They sent all these shades to me and I recently talked about them in my what to buy at the Sephora VIB sale / Ulta 20% off platinum event. These retail for $24 individually, and although I think they are worth every penny, spoiler alert ahead of getting into the review, there are some sales coming up / happening right now to where if you have access to them, I highly recommend you pick these up more affordably if you can. So I wanted to run through all the shades and then give you some idea of the formula, wear time, general thoughts on all of that. So before we dive in, if you are new to the channel, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure and hit the subscribe button to join the Bailey Bunch family. If you are subscribed, be sure and hit the bell button so you never miss a video. Let's go ahead and get started. So when I first opened this box, there was a ton of lip art at the top, which reminded me a whole lot of Vlada MUA on Instagram. I did a mask, like a Halloween mask inspired by her back in October. I'll link to that down below. It's not an everyday sort of wearable look, but I have admired her on Instagram for a very long time, and so I saw these lip arts and I thought, wow, that's really reminiscent of her work. And it turns out there's a little insert here that says she is the lip editor-in-chief for Smashbox. So she helped to design all of these shades, which, while not crucial to the review, I just happened to think was pretty cool. And the inclusion of the lip art here was very inspirational. So now let's get into the actual products themselves. The liquid pigments are a cream texture with a high shine finish, whereas the metals naturally is a chrome finish, but still also high shine. I'm wearing a chrome on my lips right now, but in the previous video, I was talking about the things to buy at Sephora or Ulta during those sales. I was wearing and swatched in that video a couple of the cream textures. They are consistently good across the board. To go through some of the talking points here, it says the formula is a cushiony gel texture that feels soft and comfortable, and you get crazy good color without drying or grit. That's entirely true. I think I described in that previous video the texture here as being something like a glossy liquid lipstick. It really is like a gel liquid hybrid. It doesn't completely dry down, so it isn't totally transfer proof. If you love liquid lipsticks that once they dry down, they're staying there until they come off or you eat something, that is not these. I do think they are pretty long wearing. Like they somehow manage to adhere to the lips without being super goopy sticky across the lips. Like you definitely don't get those strings as you open and close your mouth. It's not that kind of gloss. There's this really comfortable slip that it gives the lips. The other thing I want to mention is that it can happen across every lip formula, I imagine, but I find especially with cream finish like these, sometimes the cream pigment can settle into the gloss texture, and that just leads to like nasty looking uneven wear across the lips, lots of bleeding outside the lip line. I did not encounter that once with any of these shades, both in the liquid pigment and the liquid metal formula. They're just really, really sturdy, stable formulas, I guess. Like all lip products are stable, but there's just something about these that just makes it feel really secure on my lips, like it's not going to wander or bleed anywhere. That said, while they won't bleed, they will wander. Like I said, they're not transfer proof. They don't dry completely down. So especially when I was with one of the first colors I wore here was Crimson Chrome, which I'll show you once I do the full-blown lip swatches. But I was wearing this for a night out, and by the time I had come home, it was slightly worn away in the center of my lips. I just found that it was kind of smudged, not so much that someone would like really notice and tell me about it, but towards the perimeter of my mouth, you could tell that straws and my hair getting caught in it had just kind of moved it around my lip line a little bit. So in order to prevent that, especially with these bolder shades, I do recommend going in with one of those clear lip liners. Urban Decay makes one. There are a couple from the drugstore out there right now. A lot of people make them, and it's just something that I recommend doing if you really want to keep these from getting displaced around the lip line. The other thing that I find can help with that is to apply one coat and then go in and blot, and then apply one over top, a very, very thin one over top. Blotting will kind of take away that ultra high shine effect, and it'll take away some of that, very metallic effect in the liquid metals. But I just find that it creates a more solid foundation for a very, very thin coat over top where you get that high shine finish back, you get that chrome finish back, but it just makes it a little bit more move proof throughout the day. Besides that, guys, those are my main tips for wearing these. Like I said, the formula is unbelievably comfortable. They don't dry the lips out at all. I have swatched all of these. I just got done swatching all of these on my lips, and my lips, I feel like I could do it all again. They feel that comfortable. It's not like a liquid lipstick or something like that where you really have to go in and scrub. In fact, I wanted to record taking one off. I think it was one of the reds in here, but I recorded taking it off just to show show you, these don't stain your lips at all. Even though they produce that high impact pigment, there is no staining with these, and so even if it does smudge outside your lip line, you don't have to worry about trying to not only remove the product and the stain and then cover it up and all that kind of stuff. There is just none of that. These are so, so beautiful, and so if you are tired of the liquid lipsticks or you're just in the mood for trying something new, these are a good option. Then the last thing, I promise guys, we're about to get right into swatches, is the applicator here I want to touch on. It looks like a typical doe foot, but I did want to point out that it has this great tapered tip and kind of a rounded edge here. As I was repeatedly going in and applying these, I just noticed that this slightly rounded edge here that goes to the tapered tip is just perfect for getting on my lower lip, and then also the Cupid's bow up here. Sometimes I struggle with rounded, like more rounded doe foots, getting a more precise application on my upper lip, and this just so easy breezy to apply. It's awesome. So that's it, I'll stop raving. Let's now get into the shades themselves. First, I'm starting with Pink Drank. This is from the Liquid Pigments line. Let's go through all of those first. Pink Drank is described as a mid-tone pink pigment. I'd say there's a little bit of a cool tone dusty rose undertone here, especially when you look at the next shade up, which is Bad Bee. By comparison, they describe that as a light cool pink pigment, but to me that has a little bit more peachy brown undertones. Both look very similar, but I think there's definitely the visible difference between the peachy undertone versus the pink. Next up is Mauve Wife, and this is they describe it as a cool mauve pink pigment. By comparison to Pink Drank, it's a little bit dustier, I would say. It has that same pinky rose pigment, but toned down and deepened a little bit. The next shade is called Girl Please, and it is a pink brown pigment, but the one difference I noticed with this is that it has very subtle gold flecks in here. With the rest of the shades in the liquid pigment line, I didn't see any sort of shimmer, whereas Girl Please just has this super subtle gold veining. Next up is Rose Before Bros, and this is kind of like Pink Drank, but amped up a little bit. Moving on to Crush It, this is a deep magenta pigment. Again, it's kind of like taking Rose Before Bros up a notch, but adding a little bit more purple, almost like a hot electric purple in here. Still very wearable, I would say, but just by comparison, it adds a little bit more drama with that purple undertone. Almost done with the liquid pigments. Up next is Bad Apple, which they describe as a warm red, but I have to say, I think it's more of a neutral, if not nearly cool, because the way it flatters my teeth. Like, I really think there were some blue undertones here that brought out the white in my teeth. It was very flattering in that way, and it just is not as warm as they might be describing it, if that makes sense. Finally, for the liquid pigments is Brick Trick. It is this gorgeous deep red brown pigment, and it pretty much is as described. You'll kind of be able to see when it applies thinner around the edges of my lips before I've built it up. It does have some cooler purpley undertones there, so something to keep in mind, I guess. When you hear brick, you think warm. There are definitely some stronger, cooler red undertones here as well. Before we move on to the metals, before I forget, I do want to point out also that the shades are on top of each of these. So I love that you could put these in a container and still see which shade you're trying to pull out, because realistically, no one is going to lay them all out like they are displayed here. This is way more functional and more of a space saver. And so yeah, I just love, you can tell which color you're picking up before you even look at it. Especially since they're Be Legendary like regular lipsticks. I took them all out of the boxes because they sent me a good portion of the collection, if not the whole thing, and I realized once they were all out, they are all in the same black packaging. Like, you can't tell what shade you're grabbing. It's just very confusing to have them stored in any way that isn't inside their box, and it's just, I don't know. I really love that they did that with these. Moving on to the chromes. Up first is Petal Metal. This is described as a rose gold, but I think you'll see when I go on to the next shade that it isn't nearly as rosy as they come in this collection. This to me is more of a pink champagne. I think that's more of an accurate descriptor for it. Still very beautiful, but I would say less pink and more champagne leaning. Next up, and I'll show you the two together by comparison, is Mauve Squad. This is the one that I would say is rose gold, but they describe it as a metallic mauve. But by comparison, by putting it next to Petal Metal, well, maybe you can't. There's too much of a high shine here. But yeah, I would say that the Mauve Squad is more of a rose gold, whereas Petal Metal is a true champagne. On to Haterade, which is actually what I'm wearing right now, and they describe it as a metallic orange, but I feel like that would not be very approachable to me if I were looking at this online, and the pictures they have of these online I feel like don't do them justice in person, which is another reason why I wanted to make this video, because between the way it looks as I'm wearing it right now and the way it looks in the tube, I just feel like it's a little bit more intimidating when you hear metallic orange versus when you see it on, and it's really just more of this slightly rusty feeling orange. Like I definitely think the rust elements in the chrome brings it down a notch and makes it a little bit more wearable for the everyday. Up next is Moscow Muled, which is a metallic copper, and I really think, true to its name, it is exactly that. It has a little bit more of those red tones compared to the lip that I'm currently wearing, and just takes it up a notch to make it a little bit more of a dramatic lip. Next is Brains and Bronze, which they describe as a metallic bronze, but I would say is a little bit more of a deep chocolatey brown. Bronze to me is almost like a more brown version of Moscow Muled, because it has those orange undertones, but this is more of a cool, almost purpley leaning brown, and so as a result just kind of tends to seem more chocolatey to me for whatever reason. Crimson Chrome is next. It's described as a metallic true red. Again, I would say it's still more of a blue-based red, and actually by comparison, Bad Apple is a hint warm than Crimson Chrome, but I still just think both of these are blue-based. They make your teeth look amazing and very white. But Crimson Chrome is the shade that I was wearing the first time I tried these out, and so this is the one that I experienced a little bit of that movement with, so it was pretty easy to tell when it was all over the place and when it wasn't. Next up is Foiled Brat. This is described as a metallic burgundy. To me, burgundy is a little bit more crimson, kind of like a Merlot shade, whereas this is like metallic fuchsia to me, I would say, because it's equal parts purple and pink. Very, very beautiful, but I think burgundy would throw me off if I heard that. So maybe another point of reference if you are looking at this and thinking, that does not look burgundy. To me, it is more of a fuchsia. The two shades at the end are probably my favorite because they are kind of wild and crazy by comparison, but they still did them so well. Like, I feel like in a lot of collections that have crazier colors along with some more everyday neutrals, the crazier colors fall by the wayside in terms of quality because they know people aren't going to be buying into them as much, but they did these really, really well. And so the first one is Iced Out. This is kind of like an electric or cyber blue. Where did cyber blue come from? I have no idea, but for some reason that is how I feel like this is best described. They describe it as a metallic royal blue, so maybe that is the ultimate description here. It's exactly all of those things, though. It's incredibly pigmented. It wears beautifully across the lips. It applies evenly, just like all of these do. I love how electric this shade is. And then the last one is called Space Case, which looks silver in the tube, but I think, especially with how faceted it is on the lips, it is more of a metallic gray, which is how they describe it. Whereas silver might be a little bit brighter and lighter, this gray definitely keeps it a little bit deeper and in some ways more grounded, I think. For some reason, like an ultra bright chrome silver on the lips would somehow be less wearable than a deeper, I don't know, call me crazy, but I put this on and I didn't hate it. I put it on and I was like, this is not the craziest lip color I've ever worn. And I think a part of that is because it takes it more into the gray territory and less into the like Tin Man silver territory. So those are all the lip shades swatched. Again, I pretty much have nothing but good things to say about these, besides the fact that especially with the bolder shades, you might want to take a little bit of precaution and either line your lips with one of those clear liners out there or blot as to create like a foundation for your lips. But besides that, I'm in love with this formula. I highly recommend you check them out, pick them up during one of these sales. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Let me know which shade is most appealing to you in the comments if you have some of these, if you're eyeing some of these in the sales. Definitely let me know down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye guys!